Good afternoon and welcome to today's DHC talk on waste heat recuperation. How can waste heat recovery help decarbonize cities? Today we're going to listen about best practices and policy recommendations. But before we get started, as the last stragglers start to come in, I'd like to go over some housekeeping rules. First, my name is Emilia Pisani and I'm going to be the moderator for today. So warm welcome to all our excellent speakers as well as you listeners. If we're going to hear great presentations from 5 different experts, please write your questions in the chat box and we will address those questions at the end during the discussion session so that we can keep the flow going. Of course, this webinar is going to be recorded and uploaded to the ReUseHeat and Power website, as well as the ReUseHeat and Power, the DHC Talks website and the ReUseHeat and Power YouTube channel. So having said that, please join us in today's talk, which is it's organized by DHC in collaboration with the Urban Agenda for the EU, so UAETP Action Group 2, focusing on waste heat recuperation, in collaboration with the European project ReUseHeat, which is helping cities and find solutions on using urban waste heat. And Celsius Initiative, which I will go into a little bit. It is part of the DHC Plus Talks, which have been a series of talks organized by the DHC platform during this lockdown time. I definitely recommend you go look at the other subjects we've talked so far, and there are going to be more coming up next week, as well as the USEV, this year's USEV, which has gone digital, as many of us have had to do, and it's a Green Day, so it's an online event on waste. Thank you for that. So before we get into the real interesting part of the subject, waste heat, I would just like to give a quick introduction. Many of you, of course, know ReUseHeat Power, of course, know DHC Plus and the ReUseHeat project. So I want to give a quick introduction about the Celsius Initiative. We started off about 10 years ago as a European project funded by the 7th Framework Program, which is like the grandparent of the Horizon Europe. And we have managed, after 3 years of transition, managed to move on and live on as an initiative. During the project, we managed to accumulate a great deal of knowledge and a network, but we wanted to continue, and so our purpose is to accelerate the energy transition through the deployment of smart and sustainable heating and cooling solutions in cities. To do so, we are a demand-driven collaboration hub. We work through continuous knowledge sharing. Now we have monthly newsletters and webinars, some of which we have hosted in collaboration with the DHC Plus Talks. We have regular workshops, and we have a Celsius toolbox where you can find best practices, policy recommendations, stakeholder engagement, and examples of solutions that cities have implemented across Europe to improve their heating and cooling networks. We work very much with cities. Our focus are cities and hands-on support through what we're forming our foreigner groups. I'll go into that in a minute. We work closely with the ReUseHeat Power best ally in working with European policy, and the idea is that we can do a lot of work on the ground, but if we don't have the right legislation in place, then there's only so far we can go. And as well as supporting innovation, replication, and scaling. We don't innovate ourselves, but there are great innovations out there that need better visibility, that need better support, so we're trying to collaborate with them and support them in that scaling phase. A big part of the work we do is working with cities and experts through our foreigner groups. Through these groups, we bring together city representatives and experts to help the cities overcome heating and cooling challenges. The way we do this is we have groups around specific subjects, and it's based on a peer-to-peer support. The challenge we try to solve with these groups is that in many cities, you have different phases, a simplified scheme of how a project will go from idea to implementation when you actually have the pipes in the ground and substations connected and people getting heated or cooling through district heating cooling network. And oftentimes cities have an idea, but it's very hard to get to the next step. So what we want to do is get cities around a subject, address these issues, and help the cities overcome and properly plan. Each group is made of 400 cities, and every regularly we pick a spearhead city whose case we will focus on and do deep dives and help them in the planning stage with support of experts, many of which come from the, for example, ReUseHeat project, as well as European Power's Wasteheat action plan. We want to be a sounding board for cities, where we help the cities through these forerunner groups to the spearhead city, help the spearhead city look at the bigger picture, identify the challenging pieces that are missing. We support them in the implementation and planning parts by advising and fine-tuning the projects that they come to bring forward, provide expert support, and make sure they include a systemic approach, that they don't get locked up in the technical aspects, but try to understand how the stakeholders work, how the policy is going to be affected or can affect the projects, not only now, but in 10, 20, 50 years from now, because we know these projects, these plants have a very long life time, as well as look at, has it been done before? Can it be done again? How? Are there financial support for those? So this is a little bit what we're trying to do. In the fall, we're going to start with 4 different groups. One, I'm getting started for cities who would like to start a new network. Here we're going to be following Islington and their Green Skies project, and with support from Dublin, Strasbourg, Logroño, and Lecce. The Wasteheat group, which is close collaboration with the actors here today. We're going to be following Dublin in a new project they have, where they're going to take waste heat from a data center and connect it to a local network. We're working with Vilnius on low temperature district heating. Hopefully this group will evolve into more helping cities evolve to 4th and 5th generation thermal networks. And hopefully we're going to start a group on cooling, because as we can all feel right now, it's more and more necessary. So having said that, I hope you got just interested. We're looking for cities, we're looking for experts to help the cities. Please don't join us. Don't hesitate to contact us. You can have the contacts through European Power, DHC Plus, or just visit our website, celsiuscity.eu, where you will be able to find the toolbox and more information about us. Now to the exciting part, the role of waste heat recovery in decarbonizing cities. As we all know, in theory, we could just use waste heat to fuel to heat all the building stock in Europe. And as such, it's a crucial vector for the energy transition. Why isn't it being used more? It's easy, it's reliable, it's local. What are the barriers? Why aren't all cities connected to sewage water? Why aren't all data centers connected to local networks? We'll hear a little bit about that today. But first, the most important part of this webinar, our favorite mugs. So let me start by introducing my mug. It's what I particularly like about this one is the size. I like to drink tea. I like to drink a lot of tea, and so sometimes it's nice to just be able to have a big mug. I live in Sweden, in Gothenburg, and it gets really cold in winter, so it's also kind of nice to be able to hold it and warm up that way. But I'm curious to see about our presenter's mug. So, starting with Antonio, are you here with us? All right, since Antonio's not here, I would like to ask Roberto, can you please turn your camera on and show us your mug, and why is it your favorite mug?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, in another webinar, I showed you my preferred tea mug. And today, I wanted to show you my preferred coffee espresso cup, as a good Italian. So this is a gift by my sister some years ago when I first started to live in my house here. And so I'm really, this is really my favorite coffee cup, and this is how I start my day. So.
Thank you, Roberto. And could you just quick introduction, who are you? What is your role in this webinar today? What are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, my name is Roberto Fedriti, and I work for Eurac Research, which is a research center in the north of Italy. And I coordinate a couple of research projects in the district heating and cooling sector. One is the Horizon 2020 Rewarded which is about low temperature networks and utilization of low temperature, say, renewables and waste heat. And the other one is the Life for It Recovery project, which is the one that I'm going to talk about today. So
exciting. Thank you. All right. So today we're also going to be hearing from Erik Bernsten from the Dutch Data Center Association. Erik, what do you have to share with us today?
Okay. Well, thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm Erik. I'm Dutch. And I'm a member of the Dutch Data Center Association. We represent all the data centers located in the Netherlands. And my presentation will be about, indeed, waste heat recovery from data centers and the challenges we see, but also the success we had. It is very hot here in the Netherlands at this moment. And I brought my favorite mug, which is, I think, can you see that? It's a glass mug, and it has a brand on it. I won't mention the brand, but it was one of the first manufacturers of DSL modem equipment. I used to be an IP vendor sales guy, and I was just very proud to be very early at the the introduction of internet, always on internet, back in the, what was it, 90s? Long time ago, anyway. So yeah, that's it.
Back when the world was different, where this wouldn't have been possible. That's exciting.
Not. No.
Who would have thought? Great. Thank you. Christina, it's always a pleasure and fascinating inspiration listening to you. So welcome to this webinar. And Christina, you have many titles, but today I guess you're representing the Swedish Environmental Institute, IVL, as well as the ReUseHeat project, which you're coordinating. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your favorite mug?
Yes, so I am working at IVL as Energy Department Manager, and I also coordinate the ReUseHeat project, which is focusing on urban waste heat recovery. And we made urban waste heat recovery policy positioning paper, and this is the conclusions from that paper that I will present today. Thank you for having me. It's also very hot in Sweden, so I have moved into the basement of my house. And with me, I brought this mug, which is a Paw Patrol mug. And it's not my favorite, but it was the only clean one, so I had to take it today.
I'm guessing that the kids are like that mug.
Yes, yes, my daughter, 8 years, yes.
Yeah, so it feels something we'd have. Thank you. Last but really not least, so almost the mastermind behind today's operation or webinar here is our dear Pauline Lucas. I don't know if you need to introduce yourself. I'm guessing everybody knows you, but I'll let you introduce yourself and your mug.
Yeah, you're flattering, Emilia, but still, I see many familiar names in the attendees list. But for those who don't know me, I'm Pauline Lucas, policy officer at ReUseHeat and Power. It's been a year and a half now. I joined this association, and I worked on advocacy and policy. But here today, most relevant is the fact that I coordinate our internal waste heat task force. And in this perspective, we've been invited by the Urban Agenda Energy Transition Partnership to lead the Action 2 on maximizing waste heat recoveries in cities. And today I brought my favorite cup, which is coming from the city in Belgium of Ghent. And it's from the Fine Art Museum, and it represents many of my favorite modern artists like Picasso, Mondrian, Dali, etc. So, cheers.
Wonderful. Thank you. I see here that Antonia, you're with us in the audience. It's nice to see that you're part of the people. So I believe you're going to get unmuted, and if you would like to start by a quick introduction of yourself, and I'll let you take over with your presentation.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Emilia, for the introduction, and sorry for the connection problems. I was connected earlier, but I couldn't speak at all. So I'm Antonio Lopez Nicolas, and I'm Deputy Head of Unit for Renewable Energy Policy within the European Commission. So in charge of the Renewables Energy Directive, but also in charge of a number of elements under the Green Deal preparation, including the energy system integration and hydrogen strategies. So I don't know if I should say what's my favorite Mac as well as Roberto earlier. I mean, I don't have a favorite tea Mac. I'm not Italian. I'm Spanish, but I like coffee and I like espresso coffee. So I have a small espresso Mac. That's all I use to drink coffee in the mornings and in the afternoons. Shall I proceed with my presentation now, or my yeah?
Yes, please do.
Okay,
I believe
okay.
you don't have any slides to share.
No,
I
don't have any.
To...
Yeah, I don't have any slides to share. So what I wanted to give is an introduction to what we are doing in terms of waste heat and in terms of energy system integration. But first of all, I wanted to thank you for the invite. I think it's a timely seminar in one of the very important parts of the energy system, and coming at a critical time of reflection for the European Commission. So we are not starting from scratch all this process and all these reflections. I mean, you are all well aware that there is relevant legislation in place where waste heat plays an important role, and this includes the Energy Efficiency Directive, but also the Renewable Energy Directive, the Clean Energy Package that was adopted 2 years ago. Now we are focusing on its timely implementation and transposition by member states. So this is quite important to reap the benefits we have in the package. And I think there are a number of provisions relevant for waste heat, including the targets for the heating sector, where member states can count waste heat, or the comprehensive heating and cooling assessments that member states have to do to assess the waste heat potential that need to be delivered by the end of this year, that are really important in order to get things right. But in parallel to this important implementation work, I mean, of course, there is the European Green Deal published in December, with the ambition of achieving climate neutrality cost effectively. So the Green Deal is a growth strategy to make the challenge that the climate change brings to society, to turn it into an opportunity that can help modernize the economy and that can bring benefits to Europeans. So in that context, we are looking at many different policy areas together to try to deliver on this Green Deal vision. This is even more important in the current recovery context, where we think that the priority to deliver climate neutrality cost effectively is even more important for the European Union these days. So in particular, one of the very important things we are working on is the strategy on energy system integration. This is something that we are finalizing and that we plan to adopt on the 8th of July, together with the hydrogen strategy. The idea with this energy system integration strategy is to build the energy system, or to create the conditions to build the energy system for a climate neutral Europe, an energy system which counting production and use of energy is 75% of the emissions. So its decarbonization is essential. So far, we haven't been equally successful in the different sectors. So we want to look at the energy system in a holistic way and enhance the connections and the integration of the different sectors. For example, now, I mean, we see that the decarbonization of the power sector goes ahead, and it's now at 31% renewables plus nuclear, obviously, but this is only 25% of the final energy consumption. However, the heating and cooling sector, both in industry and buildings, and the transport sector, 75% of the final energy consumption, 50% the heating sector, but the share of renewables is relatively reduced. I mean, in the heating and cooling sector, we are 19%, in the transport sector, we are at 8%. So with this reflection in mind, and with the need to take advantage of synergies across sectors, if we want to deliver climate neutrality cost effectively, we have come up with the energy system integration concept. At the end of the day, we want to increase the links between the different energy carriers: heat, electricity, gaseous fuels, liquid fuels, and we also want to increase the links of those with the end use sectors: buildings, transport, industry. So how do we do that? We do that through a number of elements. First and foremost, I mean, we want to have a circular and energy efficient energy system where the different resources are used in the right way. The energy efficiency first principle is crucial in this regard. The use of waste heat, for example, coming from industry or from data centers in district heating and cooling networks, is quite important, because of course it will allow us to use some existing resources and minimize the demand of either electricity or gas, and it will complement perfectly well the other elements. It's also about electrification, electrifying end uses via heat pumps, for example, in buildings, or via electric vehicles in transport. And it's also about having renewable fuels, liquids and gases to decarbonize those uses, those energy uses that cannot be decarbonized cost effectively, or cannot be decarbonized at all. I mean, for example, some energy uses in industry would require decarbonized gaseous fuels and renewable fuels to be used. Also, some parts of the transport sector, such as aviation and maritime, and to some extent heavy duty and some parts of the rail transport that cannot be easily electrified, might require to have renewable fuels and gases such as hydrogen, but not only hydrogen, to decarbonize. So with all these, and with the different enablers such as infrastructure, having markets fit for decarbonization and deliver digitalization, we are coming up with a vision, which is what we are gonna have in the communication that we'll adopt on the 8th of July. This communication will have a number of actions to solve the identified barriers. Some of them will be non-legislative, but some others will hint at possible legislative elements that will have to be taken forward by legislative reviews in the near future. Some legislative reviews that are identified in the European Green Deal, such as the 10E regulation, for example, or the Renewables Directive, or the Energy Efficiency Directive. So I think all this work you are doing fits very well in trying to identify the potential, but also try to identify the the barriers that we face to increase the uptake of waste heat and to use it efficiently in an integrated energy system. So I'm gonna stop here, and happy to. I won't be able to stay till the end, but happy to take any questions if there are. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that contribution. Please, are there any questions from the audience? I just want to also take this opportunity to remind you that this webinar is for you. So please feel free, make up this opportunity you have to talk to these fantastic experts and ask questions. But while we wait, I just have one quick question for you, Antonio. Where you talk about legislative and non-legislative barriers. Could you expand 1 minute on that when you talk about the non-legislative barriers? Because it must be very interesting from a commission point of view. You can only act so far when you talk about creating the right conditions through legislation, through programs, but how do you impact the non-legislative actors that are a little bit more independent? And what are the barriers you see here, and maybe which actions you would like to see from stakeholders?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps, and that's a very good question. Perhaps I was not clear enough when I explained that. I think I was referring not to non-legislative barriers, but mostly to non-legislative actions. So everything we do is not only legislation. So we have another set of possible actions, for example, connected to financing, or to put you an example, I mean, connected with hydrogen, the Clean Hydrogen Alliance that has been announced in the industrial strategy. So this is a typical non-legislative action by which the Commission tries to support the expansion of a sector, or the removal of possible barriers. So some of the elements have legislative solutions. Some of the other elements might be complemented by an enabling framework that support the legislation at the end of the day.
Thank you for that clarification. There are actually, one of the questions in the audience is they would love to have contact and follow up on this. And it's so heavy, of course, it's very hard to cover everything and 15-minute presentation such as this. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I think you can provide, someone can provide them my email address, and they can write me an email, and I would be happy to follow up bilaterally.
Wonderful. So I guess that this is going to be recorded, and we're going to send a follow-up email, so we will make sure to include it there. Thank you very much. Thank you for that contribution. We'd now like to ask a little bit you in the audience, what are your thoughts? Where are your standings? So we're going to launch a little poll. Let's take a couple, 1 minute or two to answer. So you should have things popping up in your screen in a minute. All right. Let's close. Good. Wonderful. Have we started getting some answers from the audience? All right. Well, you answer while people answer the polls, Antonio, can I a different question came in. I'm going to read it for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So we really believe in circular energy systems and multi-energy carriers fostered by sector integration. Nevertheless, the main barrier of waste heat recovery could be the gap between risks for the waste heat producer and long-term vision for the heat recovery system, like district heating and cooling. To mitigate those risks and high capex needed to back up, but also OPEX during operation phase to face unplanned events impacting the availability, the quality, or business model, would it be possible to experiment an insurance fund? Antonio, what do you think about an insurance fund?
What do I think about an insurance fund? I think it's an idea that deserves further consideration. I think some of the questions you are asking now in the slide point at the different barriers that the sector face. I think this is very much part of our assessment. So there are a number of I would say fragmented incentives and different actors involved that make difficult or more difficult to reap all the possibilities of waste heat. So this is possibly one of the actions we would need to look at in the future. Happy to follow up with details on what you actually have in mind.
All right, great. And I'm guessing also this is a part of the work and of the discussion and ongoing exchanges that as a commission you're having with organizations and through the different programs such as the Urban Agenda Energy Transitions Partnership that you bring up with them.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, are there any other questions from the audience, or have you answered the audience? Have you answered the questions we've set up for you? As we wait. As we wait for an answer, Antonio. All right, so the result of the poll is on the screen. Wonderful. I cannot see. Well, thank you. So I see that the results are 45% are economic and financial. 36% of the barriers that people see are legislative. 12% social. And 6% technical. So 45% economic or financial, 36% legislative, 12% social, 6% technical. Antonio, is this something that sounds familiar, like that resonates with you and what you've heard and the work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it proves how, the difficulty of the task, because at the end of the day, if it was only about technical barriers or if it was only about legislative barriers, there may be an easy way to tackle. I think there, as the participants have identified, there are a number of barriers spanning from economic to legislative to also societal barriers that, of course, deserve special consideration. And when you need to act on such a policy field, this is what makes complex to find a solution, because as I said before, not all solutions are going to come from legislation. We don't have a silver bullet here. I think legislation is super important, and that's what we try to do with the clean energy package, and probably what we'll do with the legislative reviews in the context of the European Green Deal. But more is needed. in addition to legislation. And I think that's the as well the important part to look at, and a part where we would indeed welcome suggestions.
Speaking of this legislative and suggestion, one of the questions we have from our participants today is that there are many companies that have waste heat that just waste it up in the air and the water, and there's no obligation for them to reuse it, to sell it, or would it be possible to implement some sort of legislation forcing or creating strong incentives for companies to sell their reused heat, thus generating also acknowledgement from the companies, a little bit of knowledge sharing for the companies, of sensibility of that this is a possibility? Could that be one of the tracks you follow?
I think forcing companies to do something sounds a bit like a strong word, probably. But indeed, I mean, when it's about creating the right conditions for companies to provide this waste heat to district heating operators, indeed, this is one of the areas that we need to look at. In the context of the legislative reviews and in the context of the impact assessments.
Thank you. Now let's go to our second poll question, which should be popping up in your screen any minute. Thank you for the answer. Wonderful. So the poll is closing now. Looking forward to get those answers. And it's always exciting, really interesting to see, okay, what the reality and what the audience's perspective is. All right, so first results, 42% of all levels of governance are the best to address. 25% answered that it's a regional or local level. 17% think it's at a national level. And 17% at a European level. So this is really falls right on your lap, Antonio. What do you think of these results? Do they resonate with you?
I choose the one that won. I think at the end of the day, it's a combination of things, and I think it's all of the above. At the end of the day, I mean, you need to act at all levels if you want to deliver a good result. I think the European level clearly is not enough to address those issues. Sometimes the national level is not enough, and I think the regional, local level is extremely important, because at the end of the day, we are talking about local and regional elements. So you need to address those at that level.
Absolutely, and as you say, there are different roles at different levels. How do you feel the communication, but there needs to be communication between the levels so that the effort is coordinated and smooth? How do you feel the communication between those levels is today?
Well, I think communication between those levels do exist, but at the end of the day, I mean, things would need to be enhanced. Here we are talking about a challenge we are facing. So we want to decarbonize completely, cost effectively by 2050, and we are not fully on track. meaning that we will have to accelerate the pace at which we do things so that we obtain the results we want to have, and that we bring along our citizens and our companies in this growth strategy. So at the end, obviously, there is a need to enhance this multi-level governance. There is a need to enhance the dialogue and the communication between the different authorities involved into the into decarbonization. I think for example, the national energy and climate plans already took a step in that direction to have a vehicle to frame national policies up to 2030 to deliver on the different targets that member states have, and that they contribute to the European target. But obviously, we need to continue the work and to build on those elements. So, but not everything at the end of the day can be done centrally. I think there is a lot of bottom-up efforts that are extremely important, and I think what you are doing with these initiatives and these projects is extremely relevant for us to find out directly from the experts, directly from the people that are working on the projects, which are the barriers and the needs to make things happen. So I think that's one important part of the whole dimension.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment, and thank you for your contributions. On that note, let's hear from the experts. Let's hear from these excess heat owners. Thank you very much once again for your contribution. And now, Roberto, why don't you tell us, you who are one of these people on the audience, in the field, these actors. So how do you see the industrial waste heat recovery playing a role in this energy transition and these efforts for a greener future?
Yeah, it's absolutely a very key aspect that we need to take into consideration. What we see every day in our work is that there is more and more interest in using this kind of source for our needs. What we need, again, I'm with the winners of the poll. I think we really need to address the problem from a broad perspective, starting from the European Commission, but going down also to the level of the single community. The single community that needs to want these kind of technologies being implemented, and it is the single community that can oversee the project and be sure that the waste heat sources remain in the community, for example. Emilia, shall I go on with my presentation?
Yes, please.
So, you will see again shortly, in short time, how we tackle these issues of waste heat recovery. And I will show them from the perspective of this European project I was speaking about at the beginning when I introduced myself, which is the Life for Heat Recovery. And again, it is a European research project that is funded under the LIFE framework, and that is explicitly focused on recovering urban waste heat, which is available, however, at very low temperatures, so lower than 40 degrees C. And it is focused on recovering it into district heating and cooling networks, again operated at temperatures which are in the low range, so lower than 60 degrees C. To do so, what we have is a key role, what we recognize is a key role of heat pumps, obviously, that can be either used at the waste heat source site to recover this waste heat into, say, medium low temperature networks, or again they can be used at user side in what we call the neutral temperature networks, which is the distribution of the supply temperature is very low, in the range of 10, 20, 30 degrees, and then you need to have a heat pump at the consumer side, like in this sketch. In the project, we have two areas or two key activities. One is more technological. We are looking at different heat sources, like cooling towers from industrial processes, refrigeration systems in the tertiary, wastewater, data centers. Again, all these waste heat sources that you can find downtown in a urban environment. And what we want to do to address them is to work on prefabricate, industrialized substations. This because in this case, as we have a substation which is more complicated than conventional, and we include heat pumps, storage, valves, controls, and all expensive stuff, what we believe is that by working on prefabrication, we can work on economies of scale and on reducing the investment cost of this expensive component and key component. Plus, again, what we want to work is on controls, which is that we want to work on optimizing the operation of these kind of networks, and working on what Antonio spoke about also, if I'm not mistaken, which is again sector coupling, or again how to couple the heating sector to the electricity grid, to the electricity sector. Apart from the technology, what we are working on is also on business and financing. As many of you, these are the main issues we need to face. We're going to face in the next future. And financing is also risk assessment. What is the risk related to the waste heat source to leave the community, to leave the city quarter, and therefore how we can face this in the business plan of the utility company that has to do with this. These are a few of the non-technological approaches we are tackling. And again, what we want to do is to also work on an open source GIS-based tool, which is going to be available to make information publicly available to users that want to know how much waste heat and low temperature renewables are available on the ground for exploitation in a specific area. This is it from the Life for Heat recovery perspective, just to introduce what we are doing, and if you want to stay tuned with us. Today, what I would like to do is to present one of our demos. We have 4 at the moment. One is well known, is the mine water demo in Ireland. So I will not speak about that. I will speak about one which is less known. It is a very small one, led by and owned by Cogeme, which is a small municipal utility company, multi-utility company located in the north of Italy, here in Lombardia. And again, they own this small district heating network located in Ospitaletto, which is this town on the way between Verona and Milan, for those who know north of Italy. And again, it is a small network that includes a few municipal buildings, one multi-family house, and a foundry, which is placed here, which is providing waste heat to the network. The network is very small. It is a recent one. It's in operation since last summer, if I'm not mistaken. Again, and it is something like 1.2 megawatts rated capacity, 2.3 kilometers. And it is a quite a peculiar one, because it is a 2 pipes distribution. operated at well water temperature, so around 15 degrees, even though in summer they have something around 20 plus degrees available. So it is a network which is operated at neutral temperature, as I said at the beginning, and which is basically or mainly operated by well water through 2 wells, which are located in this green area, which you see here near the city center and represented here in the pictures. The wells are well integrated in the area. They are these 2 basically, while the technical room is built underground, always in the same green area. And this is how it is. It includes basically all the actuators and the big heat exchanger here, pumps and valves that are needed to manage the network. The heat pumps in this case, the distribution so is low temperature, is neutral temperature, while the heat pump are located in each building technical room. The buildings are all retrofitted, so there are no new buildings connected. And as I said, there are a couple of schools, a gym, and a kindergarten connected for now, plus a multifamily house, which is located here at the end of the network itself. The idea by Ecogem has been to really substitute the gas boiler, install the new heat pumps in the technical room, and to avoid intervening with major works in the building. So the space heating terminals, they are what were there already, so mainly radiators. And what they did is basically only to balance the circuit, the distribution circuit, and the distribution circuit, and to lower as much as possible the supply temperature to the terminals. But again, that's it. So the heat pumps operate over existing buildings and over existing terminals. This from the distribution side, as I said at the beginning, and what is most interesting for today's talk is probably the fact that most of the energy, is not coming from the geothermal source. It is coming, as you will see in a minute, from the local foundry. These are steel manufacturing company built at the edge of the town, and they made available the heat which is wasted by the wet cooling towers here in the outer area of the foundry. What is interesting in this application is that the neutral temperature distribution allows to recover heat not from the process itself, but from really waste heat, what the foundry cannot use anymore, and from plants that are located not in the core of the production, rather on the outskirts of the production site near the scrap dump, as you see. So it is a very low level, low relevance area for the industry itself, which facilitated on the one hand the technical connection or the technical integration of the waste heat into the network. On the other hand, it facilitated also the discussion with the company itself, with the foundry itself, because during installation of the waste heat recovery substation, they didn't need to stop the production for a long time, which would be impossible for this kind of companies. In addition to this, what you see...
I'm sorry to interrupt, just kind reminder that you have a couple minutes left. Yeah,
I'm almost finished. This is the substation that harvests the waste heat near the wet cooling towers. Very simple one. Again, it is a skid that is being brought on site already mounted, already prefabricated. 3 pumps and heat exchanger and control, very easy stuff. Connected to the ground, connected to the pipes in the ground. Again, the pipelines are high-density polyethylene, non-insulated pipes that you can see here. And again, you see the end of the pipeline on the other side on the other side connected to the technical room. This is the performance of the network. Here you see they distribute around 2 gigawatts of thermal energy to the buildings, I told you. And as I told you, most of the energy is coming from the waste heat. Actually, they would have much more than this available, but they obviously in summer mostly recover from the industry only what they have, what they need. Just to conclude, this is what is already there in Ospitaletto and set up by Cogeme. What we are working on now in the Life for Heat Recovery project is a smaller substation, which is thought for prosumers in this case. So it is used, it is a prefabricated substation in the range of the 50 kilowatts, so much smaller than that one. And that is useful for, on the one hand, recover heat, on the other hand, to use it on site as much as it is possible. And again, that's it from my side. If you are interested in knowing more about what we are doing, please contact myself and stay tuned with our social media. And that's it, Emilia.
Thank you. It's very interesting to see that these things are being implemented in Italy and as starting a wave, hopefully, of further development. And it's really interesting to see the industrial side, but what about the urban, the data center part? So Eric, how do you see, opposed as there are different sources of heat available, how does it work with the data centers? So Eric, do you want to turn on your camera and share your screen with us? Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. I hope you will see my presentation now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you, Emilia, and thank you for the presentation. I was very pleased to see data centers also part of the project, not the shown product, but at least it's in the scope of the project. So my name is Eric Barendsen. I'm a policy officer at the Dutch Data Center Association. I'm mainly responsible for all the energy and sustainability of the data centers in the Netherlands. We are a trade organization, so we are not an owner of a data center. We are representing the industry and actually we are the voice of the industry into all kind of political levels, but also in the industry itself. And we represent about as said, 91% of the Dutch data center markets, which is being measured in the actual floor space of the data centers. And as you know, the Netherlands and certainly Amsterdam is doing pretty well from a perspective of being a major data center hub for Europe, next to cities like Dublin, Frankfurt, Paris, and recently also the Nordic markets. So we are a small team, 5 FTE, of which one of which I'm is now speaking. We build reports on the state of the Dutch data center market, which is heavily used by investors, by financial industries who are looking at the Dutch market or looking at the Netherlands to actually invest in land or buildings to accommodate data center facilities. Today I want to speak about waste heat recovery, and here is a quick infograph which shows you the high over numbers, I would say. It's interesting to see that 86% of the data centers in the Netherlands are already connected to or already using green energy or have green energy contracts. Honest to be said, some of those are ETS, some of them are pure green like sun and wind energy. No hydrogen yet. but hopefully that will come in the next few years. The total connected capacity of electricity in the Netherlands is 1.6 gigawatts, which is a lot. Not all of that is used, it's the contracted connectivity. And we have calculated that if we could use this 1.6 gigawatts of electricity and convert almost 90% of that electricity into petajoules for household heating, we could approximately heat or keep 1 million houses comfortable in the Netherlands, which is quite a significant number. And as such, we are also actively investing, but also in time and in discussions with the different municipalities who have data centers in their within their community borders. So this is just a high-over picture. Here's a short overview of the residual heat, I would say, roadmap we have seen over the last few years. Over the past few years, most of the data centers use aquifers to preserve heat and cold. I think that's almost a common practice in the Netherlands. And as of 2016, here in the Netherlands, data centers start using their residual heat for, smaller projects like preheating the gensets or the diesels that provide the backup electricity, heating of their own office environments, small projects which only use a fraction of the amount of energy that was generated in heat by the data centers. The rest, indeed, was still being, synced into the air. As from 2017, as an industry, we offered our residual heat to the Dutch government. Basically, the idea was it is a waste of all that heat to waste that into air. And obviously there were already talks about climate changes, and obviously also in the Netherlands, a very specific situation where we had a lot of natural gas in the Netherlands, in the north of the Netherlands. And actually that gas was causing some problems in that province by small earthquakes. So there was also a discussion that we had to reduce the amount of gas being won from that area. 2017, nothing much happened. We made a statement like, please come and collect our residual heat. However, it only became interesting when actually the residual heat of data centers was recognized as industrial residual heat by law. That means that the residual heat from data centers from that date on what could be accounted for to reduce the energy need for households or for new buildings. And as you know, all countries in Europe actually have a norm where new buildings should be have a certain energy value, which should be as low as possible. And back in 2018, we saw the first projects, small-scale projects, and often organized by what I would say local stakeholders, small companies or small groups of communities who saw the opportunity of data center waste heat to heat up a smaller area of buildings or a smaller area of households. From 2019, we saw an acceleration of large-scale plants, certainly interested or initiated by Amsterdam, because Amsterdam is a very data center-rich city or area, often sealed with what we call the letter of intent, with all good intentions of all the different stakeholders. And there are many stakeholders when you want to build a district heating system with data center as a heat source. From 2020 on, the first large-scale projects were launched, and actually today we have quite some, not enormous, but quite some interesting projects which where data center residual heat is being used to heat up small districts of households. Here are a few examples. Most recent one is the one on the right hand side, the Groningen area, where we have launched a project where over 2,000 homes are being connected to the district heating system, and the district heating system itself is being has a data center source for residual heat. Also the Science Park Amsterdam student home project is interesting, and currently we have for 2021 and 2022 we have a couple of 10,000 of households in the pipeline. Something about the characteristics of a data center residual heat. The interesting thing is it's a very constant and constant available temperature, about 30 degrees, slowly rising due to new technologies in the data centers. It's relatively easy to convert data center residual heat to the heat exchange system of district heating. Today, we waste our heat into cooling towers, but it's fairly simple to, from a technical perspective, to change the water flow from a cooling tower to a heat exchange system, which exchanges the heat with the district heating system. Also very interesting, data center residual heat is all electric, so there's no fossil fuel, and given the fact that we use green electricity, actually the residual heat of a data center is free of any emissions, CO2 or fine particles. Another interesting aspect of a data center residual heat system is that the return cold can be used to save energy again by the data center, because it reduces the need to generate the cool water to cool off the IT systems. So today we could approximately make available 15 petajoules of energy, which is an interesting number, although it is only a small portion, obviously, of the amount of petajoules used by a country like the Netherlands to heat households. This is a typical setup. It is not very complex. We use heat pumps because our temperature of our waste heat is only 30 degrees, so we need a heat pump to heat it to 70 degrees, which is kind of a common number in the Netherlands for district heating systems. Although there are multiple variations possible depending on the actual distance of the data center to the housings, the availability of solar and wind, and availability of aquifers. I just want to sum up some strengths and opportunities, basically an SWOT analysis, just to fire up a discussion. I think the strength of data center residual heat is that it's always available. It is ready available today, and with small technical adaptations we can make it available. It is free from emissions. It is a growing industry. As Antonio said, digitization, electricity and heating should come together. And guess what? The more we do on digitization, the more heat we will generate due to the fact that we use computers. The digitization won't stop, it actually accelerates. So it's a growing industry, and it's a financially very healthy industry. So it's also a very solid business partner. The weaknesses, however, are that some people perceive it as a weakness that we use low temperature. And indeed, we need additional energy from heat pumps to feed the district heating system. Although, like I said in my previous slide, the temperature of data centers residual heat is slowly, I would say, 1 degree centigrade on annual base due to new technologies. So this is a temporary issue. And it will eventually be at I think 40 to 50 degrees. We are actually centered around data center hubs, which are normally outside urban areas. So we need longer transport piping, which could be obviously seen as a weaknesses. Data centers are not heat sources. Data centers' primary industry or primary business is obviously to facilitate IT and to offer continuity and security for their customers. So a weakness is that it's not our primary business. We like to provide this industrial residual heat, but we will never give a guarantee about availability, temperature, or actually the amount of energy available. And we are, as an industry, although a very new industry, we are risk averse. Again, because we are very wary about our security and the continuity of our processes. So whatever we do, if we will always have a backup system available to sink our heat in case the data center will not be able, or in case the district heating system will not be able to take up the residual heat. There are actually some great opportunities. Like I said, we can provide 15 petajoules of CO2-free or carbon-free energy, which is a very significant reduction of carbon. By using this technology, by connecting to a district heating, we can actually reduce the need for energy for the data center cooling, which extends the lifetime of the current grid, which is in the Netherlands heavy under pressure. If we use preheated water for heat pumps to heat homes, we can actually decrease the investment in the energy grid by a factor 4 compared to an all-electric heating system with only heat pumps and, I would say, outside temperature, so air to liquid heat pumps. And a very big opportunity, obviously, is that we have now the opportunity, although the reason is not very nice, but we have an opportunity to restart a sustainable digital economy. And data centers are actually in the heart of that economy, as also mentioned by a recent webinar by the International Energy Agency.
Thank you. Just a kind reminder to start wrapping up so we can hear about the policy side of this.
Okay, well, here's the policy side. We have some threats, and the threats are obviously that there are, due to the complexity of the design, the many stakeholders in the decision-making unit, we see very slow progress on the rollout of district heating projects. And that is a major concern of the data center industry, and it is just a process which is slow, and where we would like to see the governments to and also Brussels to put a little bit more pressure to make this actually happen and to accelerate the decision process. There in the Netherlands, we are still debating the actual laws and legislation on how district heating systems should be built. Should it be an open market? Who is going to invest? What about the cost for the consumer? There is still a lot of discussion and open discussion on this. And this heat law, as we call it, is already being delayed by, I think, 1.5 years. A very big issue we see is that the decreasing price of fossil fuels due to COVID-19, which is just slowing down the decision process. Everybody thinks that we have time to rethink everything, given the prices of fossil fuels. In the Netherlands, we have given a large amount of grants already to biomass systems, which obviously is somewhat competing with, I would say, natural resources, but also with data center residual heat systems. And due to the lack of green energy in the Netherlands, and probably also in other countries, we see a strong public opinion debate about who is allowed to use the green energy. Data centers use up a lot of energy, but can also provide a lot of residual heat in form of petajoules. But on the other hand, people also see data centers still as a big consumer of green energy, which could be perhaps used otherwise.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 3 messages
10
that I
seconds
want.
per message.
Sorry?
Can you do those 3 messages, 10 seconds per message?
I can do that. 3 messages. We need to improve the availability of the sustainable electricity for the sector, but also for the grid capacity and the generation. We need to build district heating which are suitable for low temperatures. And we need to adapt the legislation to allow us to use low temperature residual heat, because the current legislation all seems to be around high temperature systems.
Thank you. And on that note, I'll take that opportunity to transition over to the legislation part, because it's great. As we can see, we have the technology, we have good base case practices, but are the is the legislation in place to facilitate this, and not only as in terms of allowing to recuperate waste heat, but that facilitate and help the funding of this, which is often a big challenge. So, Christina, what do you have to say about these subjects?
So let me first get to the right place. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, we do. Thank you for the attention.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see what I have to say about this. Yes. So we will provide some experiences from the ReUseHeat project, which I am coordinating. And I have heard many things here today, which we have actually found in the project. So that's comforting. First, a few words then on the ReUseHeat experience. We will talk about the ReUseHeat project very shortly. We will talk about urban waste heat recovery, how it works, the low temperature waste heat potential. We have quantified it in the project, so we know how much energy is out there. And then our conclusion on economic and financial aspects. So the project has a vision, and that vision is that in the future, a city could more or less heat itself with the heat generated in it. We look at urban waste heat recovery from metro stations, hospitals, data centers, and sewage water. And these are all activities we engage in on a daily basis. So we have looked into what happens if we start using this potential. We have talked to many stakeholders. We have looked into the technological solutions with our 4 demo sites. We look a lot into business models and contracts, and we highlight risks and bankability. I just wanted to mention that we won last year the Global District Energy Climate Award for the demo site of data center heat recovery. So that was a success. And we were just informed that one of our other innovations has been seen as one of the key innovations in the Horizon 2020 program. It's the dashboard, and there will be more information in July. So we must be doing something right. So that's the ReUseHeat project. And what do we learn from it? Well, we focus on this urban waste heat recovery, and the most efficient heat recovery of this low temperature waste heat is made in buildings with low energy demand, but it can also be recovered into the existing district heating network infrastructure. In our demo sites, we have used a heat pump technology boosting the temperatures, and we have data center. We have a heat source of 20-25 degrees. In the hospital, we have the same range of temperatures up to 35 degrees. And in the metro in Berlin, we have a really poor case, but it's still viable, up to 15 degrees, where we collect heat in winter for heating purposes. So heat pumps are necessary, but it's not a heat pump innovation project, it's a system innovation project. So the news is that we combine the heat pumps with the low temperature heat sources in new ways. Going to the potential, we have mapped for EU 28 for these four unconventional heat sources that I mentioned, then data centers, metros, service sector buildings, and wastewater treatment plants, we find that there is 1.2 ETA out there, and transforming it into energy demand, it's about 10% of the EU's energy demand for heat and hot water. So there is a lot of energy out there that we are barely using. Coming then to the economic and financial aspects, we find that the system implementations that I mentioned are the news, which means that we have no standardization yet and we have long paybacks. In our project, we have paybacks in the range between 8 and 17 years, and we have discussed that it's too long for a commercial investor. But then again, when you talk about it more, energy companies and utilities are used to long-term investments, and some investors are also attracted by long-term investments. So perhaps it's not an issue if you find the right kind of investor. Then we have also seen that the old business logic for a high temperature system remains because it's still generating profit, and it's difficult to kill your darlings then. So the old business logic is based on central production, whereas the urban waste heat recovery must focus on the decentralized production. And in the old-fashioned thinking, you have customers that are not so engaged in their business, but in the urban waste heat recovery, you must commit and you must engage, for example, the data center into the business case with prosumers. And in the old context, you provided heat and hot water, and that was it. But now we are also providing possibly a service and even a value of green. So there are many things that could be transformed also on the business side. What we have seen in the ReUseHeat discussions is that when we talk with investors about district heatings, there are two things. One, the investments are often too small to be identified on their radars, even though they are very green investments. And then district heating is news to many investors, which makes the due diligence that they have to make cumbersome, which means that we have to help them and show our solution. We also find that the regulatory system is not clear. We made interviews with 76 stakeholders across Europe in 8 countries, and we identified that there is no clarity on what waste heat is. Is it comparable to renewables? Is it something else? So we need clarity and probably also an emphasis on what to do with this kind of resource. We also find that there is no direct incentive for low temperature heat recovery, but then again, such exists for renewables and others. So there is a competition between these waste heat recovery investments and other forms of green investments, which is not very efficient. And then also we have the problem of Legionella, this bacteria that can grow in water pipes, which means that there is an old understanding that you need to go above 50-60 degrees to kill this bacteria. However, there are now solutions to go around that, and this is also a showstopper for the low temperature heat recovery. So let's go to our recommendations from our policy paper that you can find online. We identify that there is a low awareness of the possibility to harvest low temperature sources and their potentials. So we need more pilots to build capacity. And then we need motivation for engaging in green energy. And this needs to encompass the urban waste heat, not compete with them. So we need the proper incentives. And we need to de-risk the investment in this kind of investment for the investors, and we have actually explicitly in a policy event in October last year suggested a credit facility, which is in line with the thinking of the first question that came up today, that we need to de-risk this investment. And our proposal is to have a long-term financing available for our kind of investment projects. So we are suggesting then a 3 to 4 year arrangement where you can have an institutional bank providing the base of the financing, and then you engage commercial banks to join for smaller projects, 1 to 2 million euros. I will not share all the details here because we are at the end of the webinar, but you find information on our web page if you want to go deeper into the suggestion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you very much for that, your contributions. We are running a little bit late, as you just mentioned. So to let the audience know, we will be running until 15 minutes later, so until 3:45. Thank you for, we apologize for this delay, and I hope you can stay. Understand some of you need to leave, but just kind of reminder, this is being recorded, so if you missed the end, you could just in a couple days go to ReUseHeat Power's YouTube channel and hear what Pauline has to say, or listen to the discussion. But on that note, Pauline, how do you see the work you're doing in the your Urban Agenda Energy Transitions Partnership and these recommendations? How do you hope these will impact this new stage we're coming into?
Thank you, Emilia. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'll skip the details about ReUseHeat Power. I think everybody knows us in DHC Plus. Just maybe a word to explain what the urban agenda is, because it's a bit less well known. So initially it was created by member states, but it is now under DG Regio, the Commission department responsible for regional policy. And it is aimed at helping CT to develop sustainably. And it has 12 partnerships, but the one that interests us today is the one on maximizing the use of waste heat. So we have been asked to lead this action, and the deliverable of the action number 2 is actually a recommendation paper that I will present. I will go very quickly. So Antonio already mentioned like the importance of heating and cooling, especially with regard to the urbanization trend, which makes the decarbonization of city a very important trend. Antonio has also covered the path to 2050 and the Commission proposal to become carbon neutral. So obviously we will need renewable. This is the progression in the district heating sector. So you see it's fragmented, but generally it's growing. And as also mentioned by previous speaker, so renewable is one way to decarbonize for district heating, but we will also need sector integration, which waste heat is a part of. So back to today's main focus. So the path to get this recommendation has been a multi-stakeholder one, and we've started with a discussion paper that you can see the picture from, but this will be available online after the webinar on the ReUseHeat Power website. So we, together with stakeholders from various backgrounds, so obviously the district heating and cooling sector, but also waste heat owners. So we had the data centers, for instance, and industrial waste heat with us, CTs, research, etc. We have looked at the challenges and the solution and best practices to boost waste heat recovery. And we have developed this discussion paper, which is about 30 pages long, and which really leads the reflection on the challenges and the solutions. We have had many rounds of comments and expert reviews to fine-tune this paper. And from this paper, we have developed a recommendation paper, which is mostly focusing on the policy aspect. So from the poll, we are fully aligned that the most important challenges for waste heat recovery are the financial and business aspect, as well as the policy aspects. And I will not deal with the financial aspect, as Christina already did it. And in any case, our recommendation in the paper are inspired and based on the findings from the ReUseHeat project. So I will focus on the first pillar that we have identified, the EU framework, and then on the side of the wasted actors. So first, the recommendation paper. We want to first emphasize it's a general recommendation, but that we need a level playing field for the heating sector. And to obtain this, we are advocating for the setting of the CO2 price. There are several policy avenues to do this. For instance, with the revision of the taxation directive, but it's not the only one. There is also the possibility to extend the EU ETS to the building sector. We don't advocate for any particular way of doing that. What is important is this level playing field to foster investments in renewables and in waste heat. So that's the first part. And then I think there is already a lot actually of good practices from member states. We know that there are different market conditions and regulatory framework with regard to district heating. So also attached to waste heat in different member states. But there are good practice already to promote waste heat directly or indirectly. And for instance, this could be promoted at European level. We can imagine in the framework of the implementation of the Renewable Energy Directive in the so-called concerted action. The Commission and member states could discuss what are these best practices and share it. So in the discussion paper, I won't go over this now, but in the discussion paper, we've outlined with different examples from different member states, what are those, so concern taxation, heat planning, or white certificate schemes, etc. Then our third point is, I think Antonio mentioned that we have a framework with regard to waste heat, but he qualified it as fragmented. So we do agree with this. So I think what we need to start recovering more waste heat is a stable and consistent framework, and EU legislation is key. So we agree that a broad definition probably serves climate and energy objective well, but it is true also, as Christina was saying, that the waste heat sources are not all equally treated with each other, and they're also not treated equally on par with renewable energy. So you will see what I'm referring to in our recommendation paper, in particular the Article 23 of the Renewable Energy Directive, and how if member states are opting to account waste heat, the increase of renewable heating and cooling target will be higher than if they don't opt to account for waste heat. So this is one example, and there are many others, but this is something that we would advocate to perhaps modify or clarify. Then the fourth point, it has been broadly acknowledged that we have an issue with the EU modeling with regard to heating and cooling aspects, and also as a result waste heat. So this shortcoming should be adequately addressed to better reflect a heating and cooling contribution for decarbonization with the modeling exercise. And last but not least, for this legislative aspect, as Antonio also mentioned, there is this very interesting exercise called the Comprehensive Assessment under the Energy Efficiency Directive. So basically here, member states are asked to make an assessment of the potential for improvement of efficiency in their heating and cooling sector. And this should be the results should be better used to promote waste heat, because waste heat is included in this exercise, and member states should really take this as a basis to develop concrete policy measures to do more with waste heat. So that's it for the policy aspect. There are many more recommendations in the discussion paper and in the recommendation paper, so I invite you to have a look. And then we have our last point and last aspect, which is empowerment and cooperation. So we have seen that cities have really a key role in decarbonization. So I think it is essential, and I can't remember which speaker was also mentioning this aspect, but it's key that they are involved in EU policy making, in initiatives such as the Urban Agenda or Celsius or many others. But we see that it's key that they receive funding, be it from national or EU level, so they have resources to get involved and contribute also in the EU policy making. And we would also advocate for a more structured dialogue. We've seen that things with governance are started to develop at EU level with the governance framework and the national energy and climate plans. It's a very good first step, but this needs to really be an exercise that engage multi-level stakeholders and level of governance. So, and the last point would be also to address the challenge that waste heat owners and district heating operators don't necessarily know each other, or generally across this waste heat value chains, people don't have always the chance to exchange, communicate, or just meet. So there are also a lot of room for improvement. So we thought, for instance, about forums for matchmaking and facilitate all the exchange and contacts between these actors. And perhaps last but not least, we saw that the societal aspect in the poll was perhaps not one of the prevalent challenge. Nevertheless, in some countries, we've seen that waste heat is not always understood and not always perceived as sustainable. So we would think that it is necessary to have more awareness raising towards the end users. So yeah, thank you for your attention. And this was just, I would say, a teaser, and many more recommendations and information are contained in our 2 papers. We will make the link available in the question box, so you can all have a look after the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. I would like now to invite all the speakers to turn on your cameras so we can have a 5-minute discussion. Just there have been many questions from the audience, very engaging questions. We unfortunately don't have time to answer all of them, but I have some of the ones that popped up to me is starting with very specific local for you, Eric. One of the questions is, it's great to have this data center and there's great potential, but what happens if they move? Then all of a sudden you've built the network, you've invested, and the data center moves. As you said, it's not their primary business. How often do they really move, and do you have recommendations to address that?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I saw the question in the questionnaire. Data centers do not generally just move. There is a lot of invested technology and a lot of investment done in a building. But it depends on the time frames. Obviously, 10 years is a long time frame for a data center, which is not a long time frame for a district heating system. So there might be a disconnection between the life cycle of a data center and the life cycle of a district heating system. That is true. However, data centers do not just move because they want to. There is always a reason, and the reason could be legislation. The reason could be an enormous increase in price of electricity, what have you. But in general, data centers do not move. I mean, the oldest data centers here in the Netherlands were built in 1990, and they're still here.
Thank you. So to connect these data centers. Looking at replicability, to Roberto, you have this really great network, which is on a green belt. It was a very complex and technical question, but what I would like to take off of it is, how do you replicate these solutions that you've received funding, you've tested, you've implemented a lot of resources, not financial, the time, technical. can it be done again? Are there specificities of which type of setting would you need, or how are you working with replication so that hopefully with time it could really be a market uptake and it could be possibly the new norm, maybe, who knows?
Yeah, indeed, I read the entire question, and again, indeed, it is much easier to replicate this in new quarters, in new city quarters, because you can plan everything in an optimized way from the very beginning. But again, as we have seen, we can replicate them also in existing cities, in existing towns, and that is possible. Still already. Obviously, we need to prove the concept in many cases in a way that we produce confidence in the investors and in the authorities, and this, yeah, natural evolution of the concept of the technology. On the other end, the fact that we are using to a large extent heat pumps, and therefore we have this link between the thermal sector and the electricity sector, it will help, in our opinion, in the future replicating this solution, because we are really going in the direction of the electrification of the heating sector, which is, say, something that we will need to cope with in the future. That is a way that is decided. But again, we are doing that in a smart way, which is again, we use say the district heating network as a storage. We use a lot of waste heat. We can recover waste heat from sources that we have available. And again, we optimize this link between heating and electrification. So I'm confident that we can replicate these solutions to a large extent.
Wonderful. And of course, with all replications, there's a little local adaptivity, but to facilitate this, you need the right legislative framework, and as Antonio talked about earlier, the non-legislation actions. One of the questions is, so there's been a great work being done here in the Urban Agenda Energy Transition Partnership with collaboration with cities, stakeholders, owners. You put a lot of work into this, Pauline, and now given it to the Commission. Has the Commission received it? Have they reacted to it? And what do you see the next steps? What do you hope the implications of this work will be? And it feels to me that we're like at a bridge point, a breaking point, where more people learn about it, more people are doing, and are we on that threshold that hopefully will get the big snowball that's going on to become an avalanche? How's that relationship, how's that work going?
So this is, you have to know, all of you, that this is the result of a month of work, and the urban agenda has been actually going on for even longer. I think it's 2 years back, but we launched this initiative on Action 2 last June. And during 1 year, we've been active gathering all stakeholders and preparing this list of challenges and solutions. So we are only today launching the position paper. Obviously, these are not all new ideas, and these are positions that internally to the district heating sector, for instance, the CO2 pricing, we've been already advocating for. But yes, we also contributed to the sector integration consultation. So and we are in constant contact with Antonio and his team to discuss how to shape actually the coming legislation that are gonna give shape to the Green Deal and implement this Green Deal. So, but this is an interesting period where possibilities are open, and the Commission is conducting an impact assessment to actually know what is the future is going to be like, which legislation are going to be revised, energy efficiency, renewable, etc. So we will make sure that our voice is heard, and not only ours, actually the voice of cities and waste heat owner, and try to give a better and stronger framework for waste heat recovery.
That sounds fantastic. It's really, I think we're all agree that just one actor can't really make a difference, but if we come with a network and of different actors representing different interests, and that everybody shows the same, then hopefully they will listen. And it, as you said, it's slow, but hopefully we'll start seeing the results very soon. I think we could keep on talking about this for hours, days, even weeks. I mean, this is passionate, but unfortunately this specific webinar needs to end. Having said that, I invite you all to come. There are there's a webinar next week, I believe, on large-scale thermal energy storage, which is very much connected to waste heat, because sometimes the volatility of waste heat needs to be connected to storage to balance out the loads, right? So the continuation of this webinar, I invite you to listen to Connect. You can register for this on the DHC Plus platform or ReUseHeat.org. You'll find all the information. And so thank you very much for everybody's contribution and time, and particularly for ReUseHeat Power and this DHC platform for gathering all these fantastic stakeholders, making a difference every day. And sometimes you don't see the results in your everyday, but the long term is what counts. So thank you very much for your attention and your contributions.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Have a fantastic summer and a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.